Chapter 1. The Calm Before. Reuben Spencer had always believed in choosing battles wisely. As a developmental psychology professor at Portland State University, he'd spent 15 years studying human behavior, conflict resolution, and the intricate ways families either nurture or destroy their children. He'd published papers on emotional resilience, co-authored a book on neurodivergent parenting, and lectured internationally on childhood trauma. Yet none of that academic armor prepared him for what came with marrying into the Kendall family. His son Billy was 7 years old, diagnosed with autism at 3, and the brightest light in Reuben's world. The boy had an encyclopedic knowledge of trains, could recite every state capital backward, and had a laugh that sounded like pure joy bottled in sunshine. Billy also stymied when excited, made humming sounds when processing information, and sometimes needed noise-canceling headphones in overwhelming environments. Reuben's wife Sonia had seemed to accept Billy completely when they'd started dating 4 years ago. She'd been patient during meltdowns, learned his communication patterns, and even attended therapy sessions with them. They'd married 2 years ago in a small ceremony. Small because Sonia's family had made it clear they found Billy's presence at formal events disruptive. That should have been the first red flag Reuben took seriously. The second flag came 6 months into their marriage when Sonia's mother, Doris Kendall, suggested Billy might benefit from specialized residential programs, where he could be with his own kind. Reuben had shut that down immediately, his voice calm, but edged with steel. Doris had smiled tightly, touched her pearl necklace, and never brought it up again, at least not directly. Doris and her husband Brad ran Kendall Luxury Realty, the most prestigious property firm in Northeast Portland. They lived in a restored Victorian mansion in the Alameda neighborhood, drove matching Mercedes SUVs, and treated their wealth like a personality trait. Their daughter Erica had married Taylor Haynes, a corporate lawyer whose family summered in the Hamptons. Their son Neil managed the family business and had opinions about everyone's life choices, especially Reuben's. The Kendalls were old Portland money, the kind of family whose name appeared on hospital wings and gallery donor walls. They attended the right churches, belonged to the right clubs, and believed their pristine reputation was something to be protected at all costs. Reuben came from different stock entirely. His father had been a union machinist, his mother a public school teacher. He'd worked construction jobs to put himself through college, earned his doctorate through grinding determination, and built his career on merit rather than connections. The Kendalls had never let him forget he'd married up. They're just from a different generation, Sonia would say whenever her family's comments cut too deep. They don't understand autism like we do. But understanding and cruelty weren't mutually exclusive, and Reuben was beginning to recognize which side of that line the Kendalls occupied. 3 weeks before Christmas, Doris had called with her annual invitation to their holiday dinner. "The whole family will be there," she'd said in her crisp, affected accent. "I do hope you'll bring Billy this year. He's part of the family too, after all." The phrasing had bothered Reuben. Bring Billy, as if he were an accessory, and part of the family too, as if there were doubt about his belonging. But Sonia had been excited, squeezing his hand, her eyes bright with hope. "See? They're trying. Mom's really making an effort." Reuben had wanted to believe that. For Sonia's sake, for Billy's sake, he'd pushed down his instincts and agreed. His closest friend Aaron Walker, a civil rights attorney who'd known Reuben since graduate school, had been less optimistic. Over beers at their regular Thursday spot, Aaron had shaken his head slowly. "Man, people like that don't change," Aaron had said. "They just get better at hiding what they really think. You sure you want Billy in that environment?" "Sonia needs this," Reuben had replied. "She wants her family to accept all of us. I can give them one more chance. And if they blow it." Reuben had stared into his beer, jaw tight. "Then I stopped being polite." Aaron had studied his friend's face, the calm exterior that masked a will like forged iron, and nodded slowly. He'd seen Reuben angry exactly twice in 20 years. Both times, the people who'd provoked that anger had regretted it thoroughly. "Just remember," Aaron had said quietly, "sometimes the high road is overrated." Now, 5 days before Christmas, Reuben sat in his university office surrounded by research papers and course evaluations, trying to finish semester grading. But his mind kept drifting to Billy's excitement about the fancy Christmas party and Sonia's nervous energy as she shopped for the perfect outfit for their son. His phone buzzed. A text from Sonia. "Mom wants us there at 5 sharp." Says she has something special planned. Reuben stared at those words, his gut tightening with unease. He'd spent his entire career studying the warning signs of toxic family systems. He knew the patterns, recognized the red flags, could identify manipulation tactics in case studies from a mile away. But this was his wife's family, his son's grandmother. He wanted to be wrong about them. He needed to be wrong. The phone buzzed again. Billy's so excited. He's been practicing his table manners all week. Red heart. Reuben closed his eyes and made a decision he'd regret for exactly 4 more days. He chose to have faith in people who'd never earned it. Chapter 2. The Incident. Christmas Eve at the Kendall Mansion was a performance of perfection. Fresh pine garlands draped every banister. Twinkling lights cascaded from the 12-foot Douglas fir in the formal living room, and crystal chandeliers caught the winter sunset streaming through leaded glass windows. The dining room table could seat 16, tonight set for 12 with china patterns that cost more than Reuben's first car. Billy had been vibrating with excitement on the drive over, his small hands flapping happily as he described every Christmas train set he wanted Santa to bring. Sonia kept smoothing his hair, straightening his little bow tie, whispering reminders about inside voices and gentle hands. Reuben watched his son's joy and felt his protective instincts coil tighter. They arrived exactly at 5. Doris answered the door in a designer cocktail dress, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her smile bright and empty as polished chrome. There you are, right on time. And Billy, don't you look handsome? She didn't touch him, didn't lean down for a hug, just offered that brittle smile and stepped aside. The house was already full. Erica and Taylor had brought their twin daughters, 6-year-old girls in matching velvet dresses who looked like they'd been styled for a Ralph Lauren ad. Neil stood by the bar with his girlfriend of the month, a woman named April Whitney, who kept checking her phone. Brad held court near the fireplace, telling the same story about closing a $1 million deal that Reuben had heard at every gathering for 2 years. Other guests Reuben didn't recognize milled about, business associates, country club friends, people whose names he'd forget immediately because they looked at him like he was help who'd wandered into the party. Billy stuck close to Reuben's side, his headphones around his neck just in case, his eyes wide as he took in the spectacle. "Dad, look at the train under the tree," he whispered, pointing to the vintage Lionel set circling the base of the Christmas tree. "Pretty cool, buddy," Reuben said, his hand on Billy's shoulder. "Can I watch it?" After we say hello to everyone. The next 30 minutes were an exercise in social torture. Adults made small talk while shooting glances at Billy, who'd found a quiet corner and was lining up the decorative nutcrackers by height order, humming contentedly. Erica's twins stared at him like he was a museum exhibit. "He's very focused, isn't he?" one of Doris's friends said, her tone dripping with that particular faux concern that meant judgment. "Billy has an amazing ability to concentrate," Reuben replied evenly. "It's one of his strengths." "Oh, of course. Children like that often have special talents." Children like that. The phrase landed like a slap. Sonia appeared at his elbow, her smile tense. "Mom says dinner's almost ready. Maybe we should get Billy seated." The dining room revealed Doris's something special. A kid's table set up near the kitchen door with plastic plates and paper crowns. The twins squealed with delight and ran to claim their seats. "Billy can sit there with his cousins," Doris announced. "Won't that be fun?" But there were only 2 chairs at the kids' table. "Where's the 3rd chair?" Reuben asked, his voice carefully neutral. Doris blinked, her expression innocent as a snake. "3rd chair. For Billy." "Oh." She touched her pearls, a gesture Reuben had learned meant she was about to say something cruel while pretending it was kindness. "Well, darling, I thought perhaps Billy might be more comfortable somewhere quieter. You know how overwhelming these gatherings can be for children with his condition." The dining room had gone silent. Every adult present was watching this exchange with the fascination of people watching a car accident in slow motion. "Billy sits with his family," Reuben said, each word precise and hard. "Of course he's family," Brad interjected from the head of the table, his tone suggesting the opposite. "But Doris has a point. The boy does make those noises." During last year's Easter dinner, it was quite disruptive to the conversation. "We have guests." "I'm right here," Billy said quietly from the doorway, his face crumpling. "I can't hear you." Sonia moved toward him, but Doris stepped between them, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper clearly meant to carry. We've set up a nice spot for him in the garage. There's a folding chair and everything. He can eat there where it's quiet, and he won't have to worry about disturbing anyone. It's really for his own comfort. The garage. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Ruben's vision narrowed to a pinpoint. He looked at his son, his brilliant, sensitive, beautiful boy, standing there with tears starting to track down his cheeks, understanding with perfect clarity that his grandmother wanted him removed like garbage. He looked at Sonia, whose face had gone white. He looked at the assembled family and friends, none of whom were protesting. Then he looked at Doris, who met his gaze with that infuriating, self-satisfied smile that said, "I'm doing you a favor. You should be grateful." Every instinct screamed at Ruben to burn this house down with words, to unleash 15 years of psychological expertise in a surgical dismantling of this woman's pretensions and cruelty. He wanted to make her cry, to expose her in front of her precious guests, to protect his son the way his son deserved. But Billy was watching him. Billy, who'd already been hurt enough. Ruben made his choice. He crossed to his son, knelt down, and said gently, "Get your coat, buddy. We're leaving." "Wait," Sonia started. "No." Ruben's voice was soft but absolute. "Billy, coat. Now." But Billy, his voice small and breaking, said, "It's okay, Dad. I can eat in the garage. I don't want to ruin Christmas." And that shattered something fundamental in Ruben's chest. His 7-year-old son, who'd done nothing wrong except exist authentically, was offering to exile himself to a concrete floor in a cold garage so these people could enjoy their prime rib in peace. Ruben pulled Billy into a hug, fierce and protective. Over his son's head, he met Doris's eyes. She actually had the audacity to look relieved. "Okay," Ruben heard himself say. "Okay, Billy, if that's what you want." He walked his son to the garage, carrying a plate of food, his heart splintering with every step. The garage smelled like motor oil and cold concrete. A folding chair sat beside a workbench. No table, no Christmas decorations, no warmth. Billy sat down, his little legs dangling, and picked up his fork with shaking hands. "Dad," he whispered, "why doesn't Grandma like me?" Ruben knelt beside the chair, his hand on Billy's back. "Some people don't understand how amazing you are. But I do, and that's what matters. I didn't mean to make noises. You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. You hear me." Billy nodded, but his eyes were vacant, wounded in a way that no 7-year-old should be. Ruben stayed there for 20 minutes, watching his son eat alone on a concrete floor on Christmas Eve, and felt something cold and purposeful crystallize in his chest. He didn't make a scene. He didn't confront anyone. He simply helped Billy finish his meal, packed up their things, and told Sonia they were leaving. She was crying, torn between her husband and her family. But Ruben's expression must have warned her not to fight him on this. On the drive home, Billy fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from crying. Sonia stared out the window, her voice barely audible. "I didn't think they'd actually. I know. We should talk about this." "Tomorrow," Ruben said. "Tonight, I need to think." What he meant was, tonight, I need to plan. Because Ruben Spencer, who'd spent his career studying how families either lift children up or crush them down, who'd written extensively about the lasting damage of childhood humiliation, who'd built a life on understanding exactly how human beings break and heal, that Ruben Spencer had just watched his son break. And someone was going to pay for that. Not with words, not with confrontation, with something far more permanent. Chapter 3, The Declaration. Ruben didn't sleep that night. While Billy was tucked safely in bed, his noise machine humming white static, and Sonia cried quietly in the guest room, Ruben sat in his home office surrounded by the evidence of his life's work. Textbooks on developmental psychology, research papers on childhood trauma, his own published studies on long-term effects of familial rejection on neurodivergent children. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent years documenting exactly what had happened to Billy, could cite a dozen studies proving the lasting damage of tonight's humiliation, and yet he'd walked his son into that trap anyway. His phone buzzed at 1 a.m. "Aaron Walker, you okay? Sonia's sister just posted pics from dinner. I don't see you three in any of them." Ruben typed back, "We left early. What happened? Call you tomorrow." But Aaron knew him too well. The phone rang immediately. "They hurt Billy, didn't they?" Aaron's voice was quiet, deadly. Ruben closed his eyes. "They made him eat in the garage. Alone. On the floor. Because he makes noises. The silence on the other end was profound. Then, tell me you're going to do something. I am. Legal or? I'll let you know which kind of attorney I need when I'm done planning. Aaron exhaled slowly. I'm here. Whatever you need. That kid deserves better than this. After they hung up, Ruben opened his laptop and started researching, but not his usual academic databases. He dug into the Kindles with the methodical precision of someone building a case. Social media profiles, business records, property deeds, news articles, court filings. The family portrait that emerged was telling. Brad Kindle had built Kindle Luxury Realty 40 years ago, but not through honest hustle alone. 3 separate discrimination lawsuits had been settled quietly in the 90s. Complaints from Asian and Black clients who'd been steered away from premium neighborhoods. The settlements had confidentiality clauses, but court filing numbers were public record. Doris sat on the board of the Alameda Heritage Association, a neighborhood group with a documented history of opposing affordable housing developments using coded language about preserving character and maintaining standards. Neil's social media, when Ruben dug past the curated public posts, told an uglier story. Private Twitter rants about welfare queens, shared memes mocking disability accommodations, posts in a closed group for traditional family values that were thinly veiled bigotry. Erica, the golden daughter, had a DUI from 7 years ago that had been expunged, but not before the police report was filed. The arresting officer had noted she'd screamed about knowing the mayor and threatened to have him fired. Charges were reduced to reckless driving after a call from Brad's attorney. The Kindles were exactly what Ruben had suspected. People who'd insulated themselves with money and status, who believed their wealth made them better, who'd never faced real consequences for their cruelty. They'd hurt his son because they believed they could. That was going to change. At 6 a.m., Ruben heard footsteps. Sonia appeared in the doorway, her face blotchy from crying. We need to talk. Sit. She did, wrapping her robe tighter. My mom called. She's upset that we left so abruptly. She says Billy overreacted and that we embarrassed her in front of her guests. Stop. Sonia blinked. Your mother, Ruben said, his voice calm and cold as a scalpel, humiliated our 7-year-old son. She isolated him, exiled him to eat on a garage floor, and made him feel like he was worthless. And now she's upset that we didn't stay to watch him suffer. She didn't mean. Yes, she did. Ruben turned his laptop around, showing Sonia the research he'd compiled. Your family has a pattern. This isn't about Billy being difficult. This is about them believing certain people don't deserve a seat at their table. Sonia stared at the screen, her hands trembling. I didn't know about some of this. Now you do. What are you going to do? Ruben closed the laptop. I'm going to make sure they understand what they've done. Completely. Permanently. Ruben, they're my family. And Billy is our son. His voice was still quiet, but Sonia flinched anyway. I watched him cry himself to sleep last night. He asked me if he was broken. 7 years old. And he thinks he's broken because your mother treated him like trash. Tears spilled down Sonia's cheeks. I'm so sorry. I thought they'd be better. I wanted to believe. I know. Ruben's voice softened slightly. And I don't blame you for hoping. But hope isn't enough anymore. What does that mean? He met her eyes. It means I'm done being diplomatic. It means your family is going to face consequences. And it means you need to decide whose side you're on. That's not fair. Billy eating in a garage wasn't fair. But here we are. Sonia stood, her voice rising. You can't just declare war on my family. Watch me. She stormed out. Ruben heard the guest room door slam. He turned back to his computer and opened a new document. Title, The Kindle Project. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Professor Spencer? This is Marian Love, your neighbor 3 houses down. I saw you loading your car last night, and your little boy looked upset. Is everything okay? My grandson has autism too. If you ever need someone who understands. Ruben stared at that message. Marian Love. He'd seen her around the neighborhood, always friendly, worked as a social worker before retirement. They'd chatted at block parties, but never in depth. He typed, Thank you. Could I possibly talk with you today? Come by any time. I'll put coffee on. 3 hours later, Ruben sat in Marian's living room, telling her everything. She listened without interruption, her weathered face growing harder with each detail. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then, what are you going to do? Something permanent. Need help? Ruben studied her. You don't even know what I'm planning. Don't need to. I worked CPS for 30 years. Saw a lot of families like the Kindles. People who think their money and status make them untouchable. Saw a lot of kids get hurt by people who should have protected them. Her eyes were fierce. Whatever you're planning, if it gives that boy justice, I'm in. It might not be conventional. Good. Conventional doesn't work on people like that. Ruben made a decision. I'll need documentation, witnesses, evidence of a pattern. Marianne smiled slowly. I know people. What else? Publicity. The kind that makes them uncomfortable. I can help with that too. They spent the next 2 hours planning, and when Ruben left, he had the beginning of something that felt like justice. On Christmas morning, Billy woke up excited despite everything, because Santa had still come. They opened presents, made hot chocolate, and watched the Polar Express. Sonia joined them eventually, maintaining a fragile peace. But that evening, after Billy was in bed, Ruben started making calls. First to Aaron, I need research on housing discrimination cases in Portland. Everything you can find on the Kindles. Then to 3 of his graduate students who'd expressed interest in community-based research projects. How would you feel about a documentary study on generational patterns of social exclusion in affluent families? Then to a journalist he knew from grad school who now worked at the Oregonian. Got a story for you about Portland's respectable families and how they treat disabled children. By midnight, the wheels were in motion. Ruben returned to his office and opened the document titled The Kindle Project. He began typing. Phase 1, Documentation and Exposure. Phase 2, Social Consequences. Phase 3, Personal Reckoning. Timeline, 3 months. Objective, make them understand exactly what they've done in terms they can't ignore or dismiss. He worked until dawn, building a plan as carefully as he'd build a research study. The Kindles had money, status, and connections. But Ruben had something more dangerous: knowledge, patience, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Chapter 4, Gathering Evidence. The week after Christmas, while the Kindles enjoyed their continued celebrations and Sonia attempted to maintain neutrality, Ruben launched Phase 1 with surgical precision. His graduate students, Lance Mahoney, Maria Skinner, and Janine Arnold, met him at a coffee shop on January 2nd, bright-eyed and eager. They were all working toward doctorates in developmental psychology, and the research project Ruben outlined sounded perfect for their dissertations. We're documenting generational patterns of exclusion in high-status families, Ruben explained, sliding a folder across the table. How wealth and social position intersect with attitudes toward disability. We'll be interviewing former employees, neighbors, business associates, and reviewing public records. Sounds fascinating, Lance said, flipping through the preliminary research. But this looks specifically focused on one family network. Case study approach, Ruben replied smoothly. The Kindle family represents a perfect example. Old Portland money, 3 generations of documented social prominence, extensive business holdings. If we can trace their patterns, we can extrapolate broader societal implications. Is this IRB approved? Maria asked, referring to the institutional review board that oversaw research ethics. It will be. We're studying public figures using publicly available information and voluntary interviews. No deception, no vulnerable populations beyond standard protections. What he didn't say. This research would be real, ethical, and publishable. The fact that it would also destroy the Kindle's reputation was simply a beneficial side effect. The students dove in with academic enthusiasm, unaware they were weapons in a war. Meanwhile, Ruben activated his second front. Marianne Love had connections throughout Portland's social service network. Former colleagues, retired caseworkers, advocates who'd spent decades fighting for vulnerable populations. She started making calls. I'm not asking you to do anything unethical, she told Doris Bolton, a retired school district administrator. Just tell me your honest experiences with Kindle Properties' involvement in school boundary decisions back in the 2000s. Doris Bolton talked for 2 hours, describing how Brad Kindle had lobbied aggressively to keep a special education program out of the Alameda neighborhood's elementary school, arguing it would change the character of the institution. He never said it outright, Doris explained. But everyone knew what he meant. He didn't want those kids near his grandchildren. Marian documented everything, methodical and thorough. By mid-January, Ruben had compiled a damning portfolio. Testimony from 3 former Kindle Realty employees describing discriminatory practices in client selection. Records of Doris's Heritage Association opposing a group home for adults with developmental disabilities. Email chains obtained through public records requests about zoning meetings, showing Neil Kindle using slurs and mocking disability advocates. Documentation of the Kindle's consistent pattern of donations to organizations, but never to any serving disabled populations. A particularly ugly incident where Erica had complained to a restaurant manager about a disabled child's presence, ruining the ambience. None of it was criminal. All of it was revealing. Ruben's journalist friend, Perry Miles from the Oregonian, reviewed the material with growing interest. This is solid, but you know I can't run something this pointed without giving them a chance to respond. I wouldn't want you to, Ruben said. Ethical journalism requires balance. What's your real angle here? My son ate Christmas dinner alone in their garage because his autism embarrasses them. I want people to know who the Kindles really are. Perry's expression hardened. When you put it that way, yeah? I'll write it. But it needs to be airtight. It will be. By late January, everything was ready. The graduate students had conducted interviews, compiled data, and built a comprehensive case study that documented generational patterns of social exclusion. Perry had written a long-form article connecting the Kindle's business practices to broader issues of housing discrimination and disability rights. But before anything went public, Ruben needed one more piece: confrontation with Sonia. She'd been walking on eggshells for a month, torn between her husband and her family. Doris had been calling daily, complaining about Ruben's rudeness and insisting they needed to move past this unpleasantness. Sonia finally snapped one evening in early February. My mother says you've been asking questions about our family, that you've had people interviewing former employees. What are you doing? Research. Don't lie to me. Ruben looked up from his laptop. I'm not lying. I'm conducting a legitimate academic study on exclusionary practices in affluent families. Your family happens to be a case study. You're using your position to attack them. I'm using my expertise to document the truth. Sonia's voice rose to a near scream. They're my family, Ruben. You can't just destroy them because of one mistake. One mistake. Ruben stood, his calm finally cracking. They made our son eat on a garage floor. They treated him like he was subhuman. And you're calling it one mistake? They didn't understand. They understood perfectly. His voice echoed through the house. Your mother knew exactly what she was doing. Your father agreed. Your sister watched. None of them stopped it. And now they're upset that there might be consequences. Sonia's face crumpled. You're going to make me choose. No, Ruben said quietly. You're going to choose. I've already made my choice. Billy comes first. Always. If you can't accept that, then we have bigger problems than your family. She stared at him, tears streaming. I love you. And I love Billy. But they're my parents. Who hurt your child? The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally, Sonia whispered, what are you going to do? The truth is going public next week. A research paper, a newspaper article, documentation of exactly who your family is. They'll be humiliated. Good. Ruben. They humiliated Billy. Now they get to know how it feels. Sonia walked out. Ruben heard her car start, then pull away. He didn't know if she'd come back, but he knew Billy was upstairs, safe and loved, and that was all that mattered. The next morning, Sonia returned. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. I went to see my mother last night. Told her we needed to talk about Christmas, about how they treated Billy. And she said Billy was being oversensitive, that I was being manipulated by you, that the Kindles don't apologize for having standards. Ruben waited. So I told her, Sonia continued, her voice breaking but determined, that if she couldn't apologize to her grandson, she couldn't have a relationship with him. Or with me. What did she say? She asked me to leave. Ruben crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry. Don't be. Sonia looked up at him, her jaw set. You were right. I was choosing to see them how I wanted them to be, not how they actually are. But I'm done with that now. Whatever you're planning. I'm with you. It's going to get ugly. Let it. That afternoon, Ruben sent the final email to Perry Miles, ready to publish. You have my full authorization. Chapter 5, The Exposure. The Oregonian article dropped on a Sunday morning in mid-February, and it detonated like a bomb in Portland's social circles. Hidden Prejudice: How Portland's Elite Families Perpetuate Exclusion ran above the fold, with the Kindles prominently featured. Harry Miles had done his job brilliantly. The piece was meticulously researched, ethically sound, and absolutely devastating. It opened with Billy's story, unnamed, but detailed enough that anyone who knew the family would recognize it. Then it expanded into patterns, the Kindles' business practices, their neighborhood activism, their public personas versus private behaviors. Harry had interviewed former employees, obtained documents, and built an irrefutable case. The quote from Brad Kindle was particularly damning. "We've always served a certain caliber of clientele. That's not discrimination, that's business acumen." By Monday morning, the story had been picked up by regional news outlets. By Monday afternoon, it was trending on local social media. By Monday evening, #Kindle Prejudice was spreading beyond Portland. Reuben watched it unfold with grim satisfaction from his office, monitoring responses. Then came the second wave. His graduate student's research paper, published in an open-access journal titled Generational Transmission of Social Exclusion, a case study in affluent family systems. It used pseudonyms, but the details were specific enough that anyone reading both the article and the paper would connect them. The academic community responded swiftly. 3 separate DEI-focused organizations highlighted the research. A disability rights advocacy group cited it in their newsletter. The university's own Diversity Council requested a presentation. The Kindle's carefully constructed reputation began to crack. Doris called Sonia 14 times that first day. Sonia didn't answer. Finally, Doris left a voicemail, her voice shaking with rage. "Your husband has destroyed this family. Everything we've built. Our name. Our business. Tell him he's going to regret this." Reuben listened to the message and smiled coldly. Delete it. Document that she made a threat. But the real damage wasn't from the publications, it was from the social consequences. Portland's elite operated on reputation, and the Kindles had just been shredded publicly. The Heritage Association asked Doris to step down from the board, pending resolution of reputational concerns. 3 country club members filed complaints about the Kindle's presence. Brad's business phone started ringing with cancellations, clients who didn't want to be associated with that family from the article. Erica's daughters were asked to leave their exclusive ballet studio after other parents complained. Taylor's law firm suggested he take a leave of absence. Neil's girlfriend, April Whitney, broke up with him via text. "Can't be associated with this." Sorry. The Kindles had spent decades building their status. Reuben had dismantled it in 2 weeks. But he wasn't done. On February 20th, exactly 2 months after the garage incident, Reuben made his move. He organized a community event, Understanding Neurodiversity, at the local library, free and open to the public. Marianne helped him promote it through her networks. Harry Miles wrote a preview article. Local disability advocates signed on as speakers. The event drew 200 people. Reuben opened by showing a photograph on the screen behind him. Not of Billy specifically, but of the garage in the Kindle mansion, the folding chair still visible beside the workbench. "This is where a 7-year-old child ate Christmas dinner," he said quietly. "Alone. On a concrete floor. Because his family believed his autism made him unworthy of a seat at their table." The room was silent. "I'm not here to shame anyone," Reuben continued, which was a lie, but a useful one. "I'm here to educate. Because what happened in this garage happens every day, in countless families, in countless ways. Children are excluded, hidden, made to feel less than because they're different. And it needs to stop." He spoke for 30 minutes, clinical and passionate, about the damage caused by familial rejection. He cited studies, showed data, and painted a picture of generational trauma that resonated with every parent in that room. Then he invited people to share their stories. A mother stood up, crying, describing how her mother-in-law refused to attend birthday parties for her autistic son. An older man talked about his brother, institutionalized in the 70s because families didn't keep those children at home. A teenager spoke about being excluded from family gatherings because she used a wheelchair. The stories poured out, raw and painful, and Reuben facilitated with professional skill while privately savoring every moment of the Kindle's public execution. Because sitting in the back row, having snuck in to see what Reuben was doing, was Doris Kindle herself. She'd come to assess the damage. Instead, she'd walked into her own trial. Toward the end, during the Q&A, a woman raised her hand. "Professor Spencer, What recourse do families have when their relatives refuse to accept their disabled children? Reuben paused, then said carefully, sometimes the healthiest choice is boundaries. If someone cannot treat your child with basic dignity and respect, they don't get access to that child. Family is not an excuse for abuse, even if that means cutting off parents, grandparents. Especially then, Reuben said firmly, your first obligation is to protect your child. Anyone who hurts that child, intentionally or through indifference, has forfeited their place in your child's life. He didn't look at Doris, but he felt her presence like a weight. After the event, people lingered, thanking him, sharing more stories. Marianne worked the crowd brilliantly, connecting people with resources, building a community of support. And in the parking lot, Perry Miles conducted an impromptu interview with attendees for a follow-up article. One woman, when asked why she'd come, said, I read about what happened to that professor's son. The Kindles should be ashamed. They're exactly what's wrong with this city. All money, no compassion. The quote would run in the next day's paper. That night, Reuben found Sonia in Billy's room, watching their son sleep. She'd been there a lot lately, as if reassuring herself he was safe. It's working, she said quietly. They're being held accountable. Phase 2 is complete, Reuben replied. Now comes the hard part. What's harder than destroying their reputation? Reuben's smile was cold, making sure they never forget what they did. Chapter 6, The Turning Point. March brought consequences beyond even Reuben's planning. Kindle Luxury Realty lost 18 major clients. Brad was forced to lay off 4 employees and close their satellite office. The business that had been his legacy was hemorrhaging money and reputation. Doris's charitable board positions, the ones she'd held as status symbols, were all revoked. The organization sent polite letters citing changing organizational needs, but everyone understood the real reason. Erica's marriage started fracturing. Taylor blamed the family drama for his firm's suggestion that he take early retirement. Their arguments were loud enough that neighbors complained. Neil's life imploded spectacularly. A former girlfriend contacted Perry Miles with screenshots of text messages showing Neil mocking disabled classmates from his daughter's school, calling them retards and burdens on society. The screenshots ran in a follow-up article, and Neil was fired from Kindle Realty by his own father. The family was cannibalizing itself, and Reuben watched with clinical satisfaction. But then something unexpected happened. In mid-March, Reuben received a letter. Handwritten, on expensive stationery, addressed only to him. Professor Spencer, my name is Denny Neff. I was married to Brad Kindle's brother for 12 years, before he died in 2003. I attended that Christmas Eve dinner. You may not remember me among the guests. I left early, before the incident with your son. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen. Brad and Doris weren't always like this. When I first joined the family, they were kind people. Imperfect, certainly, but not cruel. What changed them was fear. Brad's younger brother, my late husband, had a son with Down syndrome. Beautiful boy named Ricky. Brad and Doris helped us at first, even advocated for Ricky when schools tried to exclude him. But then the housing market crashed in 2008, and the business nearly folded. Brad became obsessed with reputation, with maintaining the right image to attract high-end clients. Slowly, we were invited to fewer family gatherings. Ricky was too much for formal events. By 2010, we were essentially cut off. My husband never recovered from that betrayal. The stress contributed to his heart attack in 2003. I'm not excusing what they did to your son. I'm explaining it. Brad and Doris sacrificed family for status, and it poisoned them. They've been living in that poison for 15 years. I'm telling you this because revenge, while satisfying, won't heal your son. And I'm afraid you're about to do something that will destroy you as much as them. Please consider stopping while you still can. Denny Neff. Reuben read the letter 3 times, feeling something uncomfortable twist in his chest. He'd been so focused on justice, on making the Kindles pay, that he hadn't considered his own emotional trajectory. He'd become consumed by the planning, the execution, the satisfaction of watching them fall. Was he becoming like them? Trading his humanity for satisfaction? He showed the letter to Aaron during their Thursday night beer ritual, now resumed after the chaos. Aaron read it silently, then said, "She's not wrong. I know, but she's not entirely right either. What they did to Billy wasn't just about fear or status. It was cruelty, regardless of the cause. So where's the line? When does justice become vengeance? When it stops being about protecting your kid and starts being about feeding your anger. Ruben stared into his beer. I don't know which one I'm doing anymore. Then maybe it's time to stop and figure that out. But before Ruben could decide, the Kindles made a choice that forced his hand. On March 25th, Brad Kindle filed a defamation lawsuit against Ruben, Perry Miles, and the Oregonian, claiming the articles contained malicious falsehoods designed to destroy a respectable family business. Aaron called Ruben immediately. They're going nuclear. This is a slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to silence you through legal intimidation. Can they win? No. Everything published was factual and documented. But they can drag it out, cost you money, make your life hell. That's the point. Ruben felt the cold calculation return. Then we respond appropriately. Ruben, they just declared war, Aaron. Again, after everything, they're doubling down, trying to paint themselves as victims. His voice was ice. So we finish this. What does that mean? It means phase 3. Aaron sighed. I'm not going to like this, am I? Probably not. That night, Ruben sat down with Sonia. Your father is suing me. Defamation. She closed her eyes. Of course he is. He can't accept responsibility, so he attacks. I'm going to respond. It won't be subtle. What are you planning? Something your mother will understand perfectly. Ruben, trust me. She studied his face, then nodded slowly. Billy asked me today if Grandma Doris would ever say sorry. I didn't know what to tell him. Tell him the truth. Some people can't apologize because it would mean admitting they were wrong. And being right is more important to them than being kind. That's harsh for a 7-year-old. It's honest. And Billy deserves honesty. Over the next week, Ruben worked with Aaron to respond to the lawsuit. Not with lawyers, not yet, but with a media strategy that would make the Kindles regret their decision. He organized a press conference, announced through disability rights organizations and education networks. The university backed him, seeing the publicity value in supporting a professor defending his research and his son. On April 1st, April Fool's Day, ironically, Ruben stood before a room full of reporters, cameras, and advocates. I've been sued for defamation, he began, for telling the truth about how my autistic son was treated by his own family, for documenting patterns of exclusion and prejudice, for refusing to stay silent about discrimination. He paused, letting that sink in. The Kindles are arguing that their reputation matters more than the truth, that their business interests outweigh a child's dignity. They're trying to silence not just me, but anyone who might speak up about how disabled children are treated in this country. The room erupted with questions. Ruben answered each one calmly, factually, and devastating effectively. By the evening news, the narrative had shifted completely. The Kindles weren't sympathetic plaintiffs. They were wealthy bullies trying to suppress legitimate criticism. #DefendSpencer started trending. Disability organizations issued statements of support. The university's president gave an interview defending academic freedom and research integrity. And buried in the coverage, almost as an aside, one reporter noted, the Kindles lawsuit may have been intended to silence criticism, but instead, it's ensured that their treatment of their grandson will be remembered as their defining legacy. That line, that single line, was what finally broke Doris. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. The lawsuit collapsed within 3 weeks. Brad's attorneys, reviewing the actual evidence, advised him to drop it before depositions began. Everything they published is documented and accurate, his lead counsel said. If this goes to discovery, more will come out. Things that haven't been publicized yet. Brad refused to listen until Perry Miles contacted him directly. Mr. Kendall, I have 3 more stories ready to publish. One about your company's lending practices in the 90s. One about your wife's involvement in excluding a homeless shelter from Alameda. And one about your son Neil's history of harassment complaints from female employees. I've been sitting on them because they weren't relevant to the original story. But if you proceed with this lawsuit, they become very relevant. The lawsuit was quietly withdrawn on April 20th, with no apology, no statement, just a terse legal filing. But the damage to the Kindle family was irreversible. Brad's business was failing. By early May, he was forced to declare bankruptcy, liquidating assets to pay debts. The mansion went on the market, a humiliating spectacle as other realtors toured the home he'd built his empire from. Erica and Taylor divorced. She moved back in with her parents, bringing the twins, cramming 3 generations into a smaller rental property. The house that had been big enough to exile a child to the garage suddenly felt suffocating with everyone actually living in it together. Neil disappeared. He'd moved to Seattle, working construction jobs, his social media presence scrubbed clean. The golden sun had become invisible. And Doris was crumbling. Marianne Love reported the sightings to Ruben like battlefield intelligence. Saw her at the grocery store yesterday. She looked like she'd aged 10 years. Someone recognized her and said something. I couldn't hear what, and Doris just froze. Then she left her card in the middle of the aisle and walked out. Ruben tried to feel satisfied. Instead, he felt hollow. In mid-May, he received another letter. This time from Brad. Spencer, you've won. My business is gone. My family is destroyed. My wife barely speaks. My son is in another state. My daughter's marriage ended. You've taken everything. I hope it was worth it. Brad Kendall. Ruben stared at that letter, then showed it to Sonia. He still doesn't understand. What do you mean? He thinks I took something from him. He doesn't realize he gave it all away when he hurt Billy. Sonia was quiet for a long moment. Do you feel better? Now that they've lost everything. I feel. Ruben struggled for the word. Empty. That's because revenge doesn't actually heal anything. It just redistributes the pain. Denny Neff said something similar. Maybe you should listen. But before Ruben could decide what that meant, something happened that changed everything. On May 18th, Billy asked if he could go to a friend's birthday party. Normal request, normal childhood activity. But when Sonia told him the party was at a community center with an open layout and lots of kids, Billy went quiet. What if I'm too loud? He whispered. What if I make noises and ruin it? Ruben's heart broke. His son, his brilliant, wonderful son, was still carrying the trauma of that Christmas garage. All the revenge in the world hadn't fixed that. That night, after Billy was asleep, Ruben sat in his office surrounded by the evidence of his campaign. Articles, research papers, legal documents, letters. A monument to his anger. And none of it had healed his son. He called Aaron. I need to pivot. Meaning, I destroyed the Kendalls. But Billy's still hurt. I need to fix that, not just punish them. So what's the plan? I don't know yet. But I think I need to end this. Not for them. For Billy. Aaron was quiet, then said gently, that might be the smartest thing you've said in 4 months. The next morning, Ruben made a decision that would define everything that followed. He was going to give the Kendalls a chance to do something they'd never done, take accountability. But it would be on his terms. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Ruben arranged the meeting for May 25th at a neutral location, a community center conference room, the same one where he'd hosted the neurodiversity event. He invited Brad, Doris, Erica, and Neil. Sonia would be there. Aaron would be present as witness and counsel, and Marianne Love would attend as a mediator. The letter he sent was simple. You have one opportunity to make this right. Not for me. For Billy. If you refuse, or if you come looking for a fight, there will be no second chance. Brad called the morning of the meeting. What's the point of this? Accountability, Ruben replied. We're not apologizing. Then don't come. Ruben hung up. He didn't know if they'd show. At 2 p.m., the conference room was set up like a courtroom. Ruben, Sonia, Aaron, and Marianne on one side of the table. 4 empty chairs on the other. At 2:15, the door opened. Brad entered first, looking diminished in a way that had nothing to do with his rumpled suit. Doris followed, her face carefully blank, but her hands trembling. Erica came next, her eyes red-rimmed and hostile. Neil slunk in last, refusing to make eye contact. They sat. The silence was profound. Finally, Marianne spoke. We're here because a child was hurt. Everything that's happened since, the articles, the consequences, the lawsuits, stems from that original harm. Professor Spencer has agreed to this meeting because he wants to give you a chance to address that harm directly. We didn't, Doris started. Let me finish, Marianne said firmly. You will have time to speak. But first, you're going to listen. She nodded to Ruben. Ruben pulled out a folder and extracted a single piece of paper. This is a letter Billy wrote last week. He doesn't know I'm sharing it. It says, Dear Dad, I wish I could be normal so Grandma would like me. I'm sorry I make noises. I'm trying to be quiet. Love, Billy. He laid the letter on the table, facing the Kendalls. He's 7 years old, Ruben continued, his voice steady but lethal. And he thinks he needs to apologize for existing. Because you taught him that his autism makes him unworthy of love. Erica looked away. Neil stared at his hands. Brad's jaw was clenched. Only Doris met Ruben's eyes, and what he saw there was complex, shame, defensiveness, anger, grief. I didn't plan to destroy your family, Ruben said. But you gave me no choice. You humiliated my son, and you felt justified doing it. So I showed the world who you really are. Everything I published was true. Every consequence you faced was earned. You ruined us, Brad said, his voice shaking. Our business, our reputation. I documented your actions. You ruined yourselves. We made a mistake. No. Ruben's voice cracked like a whip. A mistake is accidental. You chose to exile Billy. You chose to make him eat on a garage floor. You chose to defend that choice afterward. Every step was deliberate. Doris finally spoke, her voice brittle. We didn't understand how it would affect him. You didn't care? That's different. We were trying to protect the other children. From what? Autism isn't contagious. Billy wasn't dangerous. He was just different, and that made you uncomfortable, so you removed him like furniture that didn't match your decor. The truth hung between them, ugly and undeniable. Sonia spoke next, her voice thick with emotion. I defended you. For years, I made excuses. I wanted to believe you were capable of change, of growth. But you chose your reputation over your grandson. And now I don't recognize my own family. Sonia. Doris reached for her daughter's hand. Sonia pulled away. Don't. Erica broke then, tears streaming. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. I should have said something. I should have stopped it. But Dad said, she looked at Brad. You said the boy needed to learn that the world wouldn't accommodate him. That we were doing him a favor by teaching him early. I said that because I believed it, Brad said, his voice hollow. I thought we were preparing him for reality. The reality, Aaron interjected, is that you were teaching him he doesn't matter. That his family will abandon him when he's inconvenient. Do you understand what that does to a child? Silence. Marianne leaned forward. I've worked with hundreds of families. The ones who thrive are those who adapt, who learn, who put their children's needs first. The ones who fail are those who prioritize appearance over substance. You failed. Spectacularly. The question is whether you're capable of acknowledging that failure and doing something about it. What do you want from us? Neil asked, his voice barely audible. Ruben pulled out a second folder. I want you to understand what you did. So I've compiled this. Testimonials from 15 families who've experienced similar exclusion. Stories of children who internalized their family's rejection. Data on long-term psychological outcomes. Research on the impact of familial abandonment on neurodivergent kids. He slid the folder across the table. Read it. All of it. Then, if you're capable of actual remorse, you're going to do something meaningful. Not for me. For Billy, and for every other child your attitudes have harmed. What does that mean? Doris asked. It means you're going to fund a scholarship program for neurodivergent students at Portland State. You're going to volunteer with disability organizations. You're going to use what's left of your platform to advocate instead of exclude. And you're going to start by writing a letter to Billy, not excusing what you did, but acknowledging it and promising to do better. And if we refuse? Brad asked. Then you never see him again. You never see Sonia. You never meet any future grandchildren. You die knowing you chose your pride over your family, and that your legacy is cruelty. The room was silent except for the sound of Erica's quiet sobbing. Finally, Doris spoke, her voice breaking. I didn't realize it would matter this much. He's just a child. I thought he wouldn't remember. He'll remember forever, Ruben said. The question is what else he'll remember. Your refusal to change? Or your choice to try? Brad looked at his wife, his children, then back at Ruben. You really think we can fix this? I think you can try. Whether Billy accepts it is up to him. But you owe him the effort. Neil looked up. I can't undo what I said. What I posted. It's out there forever. So spend forever making up for it, Aaron said. It's that simple and that hard. The meeting ended without resolution, but with a fragile possibility. As the Kindles filed out, Doris paused at the door. Professor Spencer, your son is lucky to have you. He shouldn't need luck, Ruben replied. He should have had family who loved him unconditionally. Doris flinched, nodded, and left. Sonia turned to Ruben. Do you think they'll actually do it? Change? I don't know, but I gave them the chance. What they do with it is on them. And if they refuse, then we move forward without them. Billy doesn't need people who can't love him. That night, Reuben checked his email and found a message from Denny Neff. Professor Spencer, I heard about the meeting. Thank you for trying to find a path that isn't just destruction. Ricky would have liked you. Whatever happens next, you fought for your son. That's what matters. Denny. Reuben closed his laptop, went upstairs, and found Billy reading in bed, his trained books spread around him like treasures. Hey, buddy. Good day. Pretty good. Marcus invited me to his party. I'm gonna go. Yeah. If I make noises, I make noises. Marcus doesn't care. Reuben's throat tightened. That's because Marcus is smart. You always say I'm smart too. You are. The smartest kid I know. Billy smiled, gap-toothed and genuine, and Reuben realized something fundamental. He'd spent 4 months trying to punish the people who hurt his son. But Billy had been healing himself, one brave choice at a time. Maybe revenge had been necessary to protect that healing. Or maybe it had been a distraction. He didn't know yet. But he was ready to find out. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 2 months later, in late July, Reuben received a package. Inside were 4 letters, handwritten, addressed to Billy Spencer. The first, from Brad. Dear Billy, I'm your grandpa Brad, though I haven't acted like a grandpa should. At Christmas, I made a terrible choice that hurt you. I told myself I was doing what was best, but I was wrong. I was cruel, and I'm sorrier than I can ever express. I've been learning about autism, really learning, not just pretending. I understand now that you're not broken or wrong. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. It's the world that needs to change, not you. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be better. I'm working with organizations that help families like ours. I'm trying to understand. I hope someday I can tell you this in person. Love, Grandpa Brad. The second, from Doris. Billy, I made you eat in the garage. I told myself it was for everyone's comfort. But the truth is I was embarrassed by you. And that shame is mine to carry, not yours. You are a wonderful boy. Your dad loves you so much, and he's right too. I should have seen that from the beginning. I should have protected you. Instead, I hurt you. I can't undo what I did. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure no other child feels the way I made you feel. I love you, even though I haven't shown it. Grandma Doris. The third, from Erica. Billy, you're my nephew, and I watched you get hurt without saying anything. That makes me a coward, and I'm ashamed. My girls ask about you sometimes. They want to play with their cousin. I'd like that too, if you're willing. I'm sorry I failed you when you needed me. Aunt Erica. The fourth, from Neil. Billy, I said terrible things about people like you. I thought being different was weakness. I was wrong about everything. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm going to do better. Because you deserve better. Uncle Neil. Reuben read each letter twice, then brought them to Sonia. They actually did it. She read them, tears sliding down her face. Do we show Billy? That's his choice. They called Billy in from the yard, where he'd been arranging sticks by length, a perfectly sensible organizational system, in his opinion. Buddy, you got some letters. From Grandma Doris's family. Want to read them, or should we put them away? Billy considered. What do they say? They say they're sorry for Christmas, and they want to try to be better. Oh. Billy picked up the letters, looked at them seriously, then set them down. Can I think about it? Of course. Okay. I'm going back to my sticks now. He ran back outside, and Reuben laughed, surprised. That's it. He's 7, Sonia said. They're letters from adults he barely knows. His sticks are more interesting. Fair point. A week later, Billy asked Reuben, can I meet Grandma Doris? Just to see if she's actually different? If you want to. Will you come with me? Always. The meeting was arranged for neutral territory, a park, supervised, with Aaron present as backup. Doris arrived exactly on time, looking terrified and hopeful. Billy walked up to her, small and serious. Hi. Hi, Billy. Doris knelt down, eye level. Thank you for agreeing to see me. Dad says you're sorry. I am. So sorry. Why'd you make me eat in the garage? Direct, unflinching, exactly like Reuben. Doris's eyes filled with tears. Because I was scared of what people would think. And I was wrong to care more about that than about you. Billy nodded slowly. That was mean. It was. Are you going to be mean again? I'm going to try very hard not to be. But if I mess up, I want you to tell me. Okay. Billy considered her for a long moment, then said, you can watch me play on the swings if you want. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. but it was a start. Over the next months, the Kindles made good on their promises, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Brad established the Kindle Spencer Neurodiversity Scholarship at Portland State. Doris began volunteering with Special Olympics. Erica brought her daughters to a family picnic and taught them to play with Billy on his terms. Neil wrote an editorial for The Oregonian about his own prejudice and growth. None of it erased what they'd done, but it was something. In October, Reuben received a letter from Perry Miles. Professor Spencer, thought you'd want to know. The articles we published won a Regional Journalism Award for impact reporting. They've also been cited in 3 different academic studies on disability bias. More importantly, I've gotten letters from parents across the country saying they felt empowered to advocate for their kids after reading about your story. You made a difference. Whatever else happened, that matters. Perry. Reuben pinned that letter to his office bulletin board, next to a drawing Billy had made of their family, stick figures holding hands, labeled in careful printing. Dad, Billy, Mom, and Aaron, who's basically family. That night, at their regular Thursday beer ritual, Aaron raised his glass. To justice, revenge, and knowing when to stop. To family, Reuben countered. The ones we're born with and the ones we choose. They drank, and Aaron said, "You know, I thought you were going to go too far. Destroy them so completely they couldn't recover. I thought about it. What stopped you?" Reuben thought about Billy, brave and resilient, choosing to give his grandmother a chance despite having every reason not to. "My son is a better person than me. I'm trying to learn from him." That's growth, man. Or exhaustion. Hard to tell. They laughed, and Reuben felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. The final letter came in November, a year after the garage incident. It was from Denny Neff. Professor Spencer, I saw the scholarship announcement. I saw Doris volunteering. I saw the changes, small but real. You could have destroyed them completely. Instead, you gave them a chance to be better. That's not weakness. That's strength. Ricky would have loved Billy. They would have been great friends. Thank you for fighting. And thank you for knowing when to stop fighting. Denny. Reuben read the letter at his desk, surrounded by research papers and student work, the machinery of his normal life reasserting itself. Then he closed his laptop, went upstairs, and found his family in the living room. Sonia grading papers. Billy building an elaborate train track across the entire floor. "Dad," Billy called. "Look, I made a loop-de-loop. That's amazing, buddy. Want to play?" Reuben looked at the trains, the tracks, his son's bright, eager face. He thought about the garage, the letters, the revenge, the reconciliation, all of it. Then he sat down on the floor. "Show me how it works." And for the first time in a year, Reuben Spencer, professor, father, architect of revenge, and reluctant teacher of redemption, simply played with his son and let the past be past. Outside, the Portland rain started falling, washing the streets clean, and somewhere across town, Doris Kindle stood in her smaller, humbler kitchen, looking at a photograph of a boy she'd failed, and whispered, "I'll do better. I promise." Whether she would or not remained to be seen. But Billy Spencer, 7 years old, autistic, brilliant, and loved beyond measure, was already building something better, a future where he knew, bone deep and certain, that he was enough exactly as he was. And that was victory enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.